Hello, hello, and welcome in, everybody. My name is Deborah Jeffries, and on behalf of HR Answers, welcome to this month's HR Lunch Bunch. For those of you who have not joined us before, this is the first Wednesday of every month. We usually have HR Lunch Bunch. It's an hour conversation, discussion. Hear those words, discussion, which means you get to talk and ask questions and share information. We usually have a guest speaker. We've got Ann Jones with us today. She is the VP of Strategy and Growth for ACS Professional Staffing. And I want to emphasize the VP of Strategy and Growth. Why is that important? Congratulations, Ann, on the recent promotion. So we'll put that out there. And I think it's a perfect title for you because you do have tremendous ideas. You do think big picture. You're always thinking and strategizing and coming up with creative thoughts and ideas for others. And so Anne and I have been acquainted for, gosh, I don't know, a number of years. And I've always enjoyed the opportunity to chat and connect and to network. Anne is a wonderful person to connect with. And so when doing HR Lunch Bunch, one of the things that or the organization HR Answers has been doing this come October, 16 years. Oh my gosh. And so we just pick a variety of topics. If you think there are things we should be talking about, you should put them in the chat box and let us know. So I encourage you to share with me because next year we're even going to change it up a little bit in terms of how we're doing it. So I welcome those because as the Vice President of HR Answers, I've been facilitating this for quite some time. And I like to hear from others. I like to invite people who are experts in the areas. So I tend to kind of sit back and make sure that I'm funneling questions from the chat box. You should feel free to unmute yourself. But I found with HR professionals, sometimes we can't get out of the building. Well, COVID, we really couldn't get out of the building, so to speak. We went remote. We've had people from really all over the country join us. But this gives us a chance to network, connect, learn, share what's working, what's not working, ideas. So sometimes our guests bring a PowerPoint, they've got stuff to say, but I've always asked them to make sure that it's engaging and interactive. And so today we want to talk about innovative ideas around recruiting. What can we do? How can we do it to help our organizations bring in good talent? So hopefully if this is your first time, let us know, where are you coming from? What organizations are you with? Let us know in the chat box. If you've got a question and you want to make sure we're addressing it, let us know that too. So please, and I want to have a special shout out to Carrie. Carrie, thank you for being on camera. It gives us something other to look at than ourselves. So please smile nice and bright. So if you are happy to be on camera, it's not intimidating. Look at me, I do it every day, most of the time. So we would love to be able to see you if you're comfortable with that. So Miss Ann, please regale us with not only your knowledge and information, your sparkling personality. If I've missed something wonderful about you to say, then fill us in. But let's go ahead and get started. The floor, as it were, is all yours.
Well, thank you, Deborah, for that great introduction. Yes, I think I'm probably close to a decade, honestly, of us connecting or sorts. I don't know, it's been quite a while. So it's always a pleasure. I'm glad to be here and help out. And with that being said, I'm going to do a screen share. I have a PowerPoint, couple of slides, really talking points, right? We'll go through. I got 3 today. And this is a place where you guys can ask questions, obviously give feedback. So I'll definitely kind of each point I'll go over a little bit of information, but then really kind of open up the floor for that as well. So yeah, definitely unmute, interrupt me at any point in time. Happy to answer any questions. I am a true networker by nature. At the end of the slide, I even have my LinkedIn link and all my contact information if you guys want to connect as well. So let me go ahead and get going here. Just a second. Make sure I'm sharing the right screen is always helpful. All right. So Deborah, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Awesome. So again, this talk is going to be titled Recruiting Solutions for 2023. A lot of this is really the last couple of years. I mean, it's all really pretty applicable, and definitely will be from kind of what we're seeing in the market and the shift for at least into 2024 as well, before we start seeing any kind of full differences across industry sectors. So really quick, I just want to do a quick introduction. Um, so as Deborah so kindly said, I did just get promoted. So that is my new title for VP of Strategy and Growth. Definitely helping ACS grow, but also my clients, organizational, partners, whether it's government, whether it's private clients. I've kind of got my hands on a lot of different industries, as well, as you can kind of see there. I do have over 20 years of my recruiting, staffing, and HR experience. So I've done a little bit of everything, and really do like the pace and variety of staffing. I'm also a member of American Staffing Association's Engineering, IT, and Scientific Section Council. So as we go through the slides, you might see a little bit from the American Staffing Association with that as well. So definitely a good thing to have a pulse on not only the local market, but also from a nationwide standpoint too. But enough about me, let's get into the fun stuff. So with that being said, here's our discussion topics for today. So how talent disruption and the opportunities they've created can help you attract and retain quality talent. Again, it's not just recruiting, you got to retain them as well, right? Otherwise you end up recruiting again. So the second point is how you can turn job descriptions from a unicorn ordering form into something that you will attract more candidates. And then also how workplace flexibility affects recruitment success and what you can do to ensure your organization is meeting candidate needs. Again, I'm sure you guys have heard a ton of webinars, ton of different things about flexibility, but we'll touch on that at the end. And again, flexibility includes more than just work from home and working remote as well. So we'll touch on that too, to keep your employees happy. So with that, again, talent disruptions and the opportunities. We've got a lot of going on. I think the Great Resignation, everybody's talking about, right? There was this movement. A lot of people, with the pandemic had kind of revisited where they were at, what they were doing, what they wanted to do next, what was important to them. And we saw a lot of people, moving around. They didn't all move out of the industry and job sectors. They made moves. So as some organizations lost people, some picked some people up. And there was kind of a great shift situation that was going on. So right now, we do still have a tight candidate market. There's obviously been a lot of layoffs that we see in the news. But if we actually look at, BLS reports, we look at the data, we analyze it. There's a lot of companies, especially small to mid-sized companies, that were understaffed and were looking for people for a long time. And so they've picked up a lot of those people. So people that are highly skilled usually don't stay on the market more than, say, 3 to 6 months at the most. And so from a national data perspective, we're seeing a lot of just, again, shifting, kind of a settling of things and people into different roles. But the tight candidate market, a couple of things that come along with that, and why we're seeing a lot of movement is expectations versus reality, from the employees to the employers. Expectations of the job, the role, the responsibilities, the qualifications, versus the actual reality, good or bad, that really takes someone to do the job successfully or to work in that environment. We're seeing cultural misalignment. So again, part of that plays into, having flexibility, but part of that also plays into being able to define and communicate the culture. Work locations, obviously a big one, as we've seen a lot of hybrid and remote pop up. Remote's kind of trimmed down a little bit. But we are seeing a lot of hybrid, and then slow candidate selection process. So I'm seeing that a lot with our clients as well. That they're still having, multiple steps over multiple weeks. and it's just killing them. They're not able to kind of execute who they're looking for. So with that being said, attracting more candidates, ideally you're going to want to set clear expectations, and that's going to go from the job description, right? Job description, interview, onboarding throughout. Also, with kind of nod to the job description is, do you need someone to come in with those skills, or do you need somebody with the aptitude to learn those skills? And do you have the ability to upskill and or reskill them to fit? What we're seeing right now is a skill gap in the market. So we're seeing unemployment, but we're seeing, right, all these jobs, and the difference is because the people that are currently unemployed that are looking and things aren't skilled to do what's available. So in some sectors, especially some of the ones I work in, it's still a negative unemployment rate, and it's only growing, and there's no way to get enough people with the education and credentials fast enough. So those are opportunities that you guys can look at as well. Define an accountable culture. So are you talking the talk, you walking the walk? What does that look like? Do people know what your culture are? Do they know what your values are? For example, ACS core values: integrity, empowerment, community, entrepreneurial spirit, and authenticity. So for example, I need to look for ways to empower my team to embrace their entrepreneurial spirit within the boundaries of our workday. Again, what are your values? What does that look like? Flexibility is huge, right? And again, we'll talk a little bit more later about flexibility and what you can do for work location or timing, start end times, right? What does that look like? And then speed of hire, defeat the competition. You guys are in a competition. So realistically, whether you think you are or not, there's other people vying for that same talent. And with that being said, how are you setting yourself apart, right? That could be your culture, that could be your flexibility, that could be the opportunity to reskill, upskill, right? Where maybe a competitor of yours doesn't. But speed to hire is definitely those things too. How many steps do you really need? Can you combine some of those steps? Can you speed up the process? So that's kind of where our talent disruptions and opportunities. There's a lot more. Again, very high level overview today. Technology is another one as well. But would love to, kind of open for any questions or comments kind of on this talking point. If anybody has anything specific that they'd like to share or to ask.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
The quiet bunch.
Say now's a good time to ask. I was going to say, I will definitely echo that whole element of upskilling, reskilling, quote unquote, new skilling. There's the need, the desire, the value and the importance is tremendous to be able to take a look at what is it that we have in house, what is it that we really need, what's the job, to be able to make that a reality. And actually I've been doing some training on that recently, 3 different associations to bring that to light, because they're not finding what they're needing in terms of trying to hire people. And so it's kind of like that element of, do you understand that you're probably going to have to hire people with more of a focus on the job training? And so your comment about, do they have the aptitude, and that we as employers across the board, that is going to be a bigger scenario with the skills gap that is out there, more on the job training on the front side, and that we actually need to be focused with our managers and supervisors. You're gonna have to be doing more of that. And do they understand that? Because we're not finding what we need coming in the door.
Yeah, we've realized coaching and mentoring is really critical. And I think realistically, to with that, if you've got somebody that wants to upskill, that wants to reskill, right, that growth opportunity, they're usually in for the longer term if they don't care to upskill or reskill or growth opportunities, right? Then also kind of tells you a little bit of something too. But I know, Deborah, you're great about obviously offering a lot of classes to do training, right? Whether it's frontline supervisors or HR professionals. So definitely reach out.
Well, and
All
we have a
right.
question. We have a question from Jennifer, and I just asked her if she could clarify the question. How do you influence the hiring manager to be open to this? Which part of this, Jennifer? Open to which part? Oh, to the
Yes.
hiring and or the training. I'm
That's
sorry.
Deborah's question. That's another webinar, I think.
I'm just saying, they don't get to be open to it. It's a fact. It's a reality. So yeah, we can talk at the end of lunch bunch. I don't want to take away from Anne. But yeah, we can chat if you want to chat a little bit afterwards in terms of some things you can perhaps put in place.
Yeah, and I think that's good. Like I said, upskilling, reskilling is a whole nother conversation. But we'll kind of move forward. We're going to get some other things. We're going to touch on a couple of this slide throughout. But part of this, and this is kind of a fun one, how can you turn your job descriptions from a unicorn ordering form into something that will attract more candidates? So I was kind of wondering too for Jennifer, if she meant like, how do I get the hiring manager on board to, right? Like not just to upskill, reskill, but it starts with the job description. Like, what do you actually need on the job description, bare bones, versus what would you like to have? And so this is kind of where we're at. So for example, this slide looks really super busy, especially in the unicorn section, and that's on purpose. Basically, with that being said, I actually had to snip it because I tried to copy and paste it from Indeed, right? From a administrative assistant job description that I found. Try to do it, and it literally would not. It was like micro small, probably about as small as it is now. Took up too much. It was taking up both sides of the screen, so I just snipped it, put it in as a picture. But this is just the qualification section of an administrative assistant. This is it. Like, this is insane. And then we wonder why we're having problems with candidates applying, staying engaged. Like, they're not going to make it through the job description. So unicorns, if you guys are not aware, unicorns are those mystical candidates that whose resumes check every single box, right? That have job descriptions that look like the unicorn section and that are like, yes, I check that 100%, 105%, I'm good. That's what that is. With that, some of us are unicorns. Definitely, there's some of us here in the meeting today. But with that being said, we don't have a lot of them. So most of us cannot hold out for the unicorn. We have to have work done, whether it's affecting our revenue, whether, you know, maybe our current employees are getting more burnt out because we have that position that's open and we need somebody in there. So really kind of looking at that. Hiring managers, right, are usually going to give you very long laundry list of things that here's all the things that I want and everything that's happening. With that being said, what's really needed is probably just a fraction of that. So as a practical example, I just totally found something on the East Coast, so it's not related to any of my clients. I don't want to put anybody on blast that I work with or what that is. So I just like, okay, let me be generic as possible. But what I did to kind of give you guys an idea, because I know for me, honestly, I have to rewrite a lot of client job descriptions for my team to be like, here's what they really want. And it takes a lot of time. So I wanted to give a tool or suggestion, right? We've all kind of heard about the AI and the chat GPT and everything that's going on. I'm kind of getting new into it myself, to be honest. But I took Ghostwriter AI, which I have a link down in the slide, literally put that long laundry list, put it in there, asked it to rewrite it. And what you see under the attract more candidates is what came out. Now, I'm not going to say a degree in secretarial science, but I was like, for the example, right? I'm even going to clean up the AI. I'm literally just going to copy and paste it so you guys can see. Obviously, I'd go in there and I would clean it up a little bit more, and I'd kind of probably truncate a couple of things and such. But this is what we're looking at, right? Because most of the clients I'm talking to, they either haven't revisited with their with the actual managers, right? If I'm talking to an HR person, that's kind of my point of contact. They haven't really deep dived. They don't have time. The hiring managers don't know where to start. HR definitely, let's be honest, guys do not have time to rewrite every single job description along the way. And so we use archive, right? We kind of pull it out of the, dust it off and be like, yes, this is the last time we hired for this position. This is what we have. And it's just very time consuming, right? It's also very time consuming for the candidates that are looking at this going, I kind of got blurry eyed about line 5, right? Like they're just like, and I'm done and move on, right? Because they're like, well, if the client's going to write the job description like this, right? Or the employer, right? For the candidate, is that how they do business? I don't know if I want to, like, that seems like a lot, right? So again, this is setting yourselves up from what do you really need, right? In the job description, when you're interviewing for what you actually need, right? There's must-haves and there's like tos, right? I'd like to have. And for me, and what we do is we're required and preferred, right? If I actually have a fabulous rock star candidate with 4 years of experience, I'll consider them. They're exception to the rule, but I'll consider them. Ideally, I'd like 7+ years for this role, whatever it is, right? And so my job descriptions will literally say 5+ required, right? 4+ required, 7 preferred years, right? So I can make an exception to the rule, but I have a hard line. So I know I don't care how much a rock star, 3 years is not going to be enough. It's got to be at least 4. Then that's where I start with. So those are things that you can kind of do. And again, use the technology we've got. It'll save a ton of time. So just a couple of things. But what we're really looking for on the unicorn piece is we're looking for a magical combination. And we're not looking for a unicorn, right? And so if we find one, great, consider yourself lucky, plan to pay them a lot of money to stay. Like that's to get there and to stay, right? But with that, a lot of us don't have those unicorn budgets either for those unicorn candidates. So we need it filled, we need quality work done, right? We want to, whatever our culture is, whatever our values are, we want to hire towards that, and that's what we're looking for. So couple of points here. We're really wanting skills, right? What's really needed for the role? Can they get a certification later? Can they get training later? Like, for example, if I have, hey, I need someone that's going to help me write proposals. Do I need proposal writing experience, or do I need technical writing and report experience that I can train on how to take those skills and write RFP proposal responses for me, right? What does that look like? Usually from an HR standpoint, from a hiring manager, you print it out, you take your pen with you, like that red line, and you sit down with a manager, obviously virtual sometimes now, or table across the table, and say, okay, Bob, I know you want 7 years. Would you take 4, right? Like if they're awesome, cross it out, put 4, right? Really kind of hone in that job description. Phenomenal attitude, right? They genuinely believe in the mission of your organization. They're passionate about what you're delivering. Aptitude, the ability to learn, grow, and develop, right? So we touched on this just a minute ago. It's not just that you as an organization offer reskilling and upskilling. It's literally that they want to upskill and reskill, right? So the aptitude, because if they don't have the ability or really the desire to learn and develop and grow, then they're either checking the box or they're not. And even if they're checking the box now, as we all morph, right? As our economy morphs, obviously we had the pandemic, a lot of us, change is a constant. If they check the box now, but you don't feel that they have aptitude to go beyond their current box, then really look at that going, are they going to be able to move and grow and change with their organization as we're going to need to you over time. And then culture fit, right? They believe embody the unique values of your organization. So that's going to be different for ACS. It's going to be different for HR Answers. It's going to be different for everybody. And that's, kind of, again, what does that look like? So that's the combination. You guys have questions and things, I'm going to go to a different slide, but go ahead and put them in the chat, or if you want to unmute, about kind of the job descriptions, unicorn candidates. I know a lot of people kind of get stuck in this section, but with this, keep it simple, right? So one, this is from Indeed, 36% of job seekers are searching by job title. I'll give you a good example. Previous employer, my title was Business Solutions Manager. Business solutions for what? What does that mean? What does that mean too? I was literally a recruiter and an account manager for a staffing company. Couldn't tell by my title. If I wanted a recruiter role or an account manager sales role for staffing, I would have never been able to find it for the title. That's not helpful. If you want candidates that are actually qualified for your role, even if you're calling it internally something else, can you post the different title? Can you put it in parentheses? Can you make it searchable on the job boards? Things like that are really, really helpful. And the other part too is 52% of job seekers say the quality of a job description is very extremely influential on their decision to apply. So again, if you're too wordy, if their eyes are blurring at step 5, they can't get through it, the likelihood is they're never going to apply. You're never going to be able to consider them. So keeping it very simple, very direct and concise is exactly what you're aiming for, and whatever that means. It's going to vary from position to position and company to company. Deborah, do you have any questions or comments?
Actually, Heather has a question for you, and I think it kind of actually ties in nicely with these kinds of observations, because have you found that candidates are deterred by the preferred qualification kind of header because they think they have to meet those 100%?
Yes. There's actually, and I think, I don't know if it was the link, like I said, I put the link to where I got from Indeed on there. And I don't know if it was this one or one other one, because I was kind of like pulling different pieces. But what the situation is the candidates aren't savvy on job descriptions. I mean, I talk to and see a lot of recruiters that don't know how to write a job description. So a candidate, of course, they've never written one, they don't know. They just see qualifications, right? They're not seeing all of those things. So for example, that's why if I'm going to say, hey, I really want 7 years, but I'll take 4, I'm going to put on the same line, right? So that they can see like 4+ required, 7+ preferred. They can decide, right? Because if they're a rock star, they're going to be like, I got this. If they're not, then it's probably not for them anyway, right? They're like, well, I don't 7, I'm not sure, but I'm going to put it right there. So then they're going to be able to make that judgment call, right? But what happens is when you have this, again, unicorn ordering form to do all the things, that's going to deter. So when you look at your preferred list, if it's like highly desired, right? You're like, if they have all the other things, they don't technically have to have it, but I really want it, then you probably want to put it on your quality, right? Your preferred list. But if it's, again, the laundry list of all their jobs, all their responsibilities, all the things where it just gets excessive at that point, then yes, you're because everybody's going to have to do that. We already know that there's gaps right now, obviously gender gaps. We also know that there's a percentage where males are more likely to apply for roles that they're not 100% qualified for, right? And then women are more likely to go, well, I don't check every box, I'm not going to qualify. And that's actually creating an issue. So the better that we can be concise on what we really need, few preferred, right? If it's like mission critical preferred, great. But the rest of it, talk to them in an interview. Here's the job, here's the HR job description. And then here's what I'm posting online to attract candidates, right? again, you are in competition. How are you setting yourself apart from every other organization that wants the same candidate? So again, I totally feel free to disclose, but it might be something that bare bones, right, of responsibilities, qualifications, put it in there, mission critical. Add some sparkle, add an attractive summary about your culture, why they want to come work here, right? You have to sell the candidate. This is not like, we are so awesome, you should pay us to work here. No, right? This is like, hey, they've got 10 to 20 plus opportunities. Why do they kind of want to work for you? So your job description should be a mix of it, where you don't want people to apply that aren't really qualified, but you don't want to just distract someone else with kind of that overlist. So hope that answers and gives some information. I don't know if there's anything else, Deborah, in the chat box, or if there's any follow-up to that as well.
The follow-up kind of statement was, I'm now using welcomed additional qualifications, which I thought was kind of a nice observation. I've not seen or heard that before. So Heather, I made a note of that. And just a blanket observation in general, which is a sad commentary, quite frankly, is I'm extremely disappointed in the humans. They don't read. I echo your statement that, if it's too much, it's like I read 5-6 lines, I'm out. If it isn't, honestly, there's a little bit, if it isn't sexy. I mean, if you haven't caught my attention, why do I want to keep reading if I'm not going to click through, kind of thing. But at the same time, it's like, we're trying to give you some information to help you decide. Are you in alignment with us? But you have to read it, because if you read it, because not this most recent job opening, because we just got done hiring for a position 2 years ago, we had a truck driver apply for one of our positions at HR Answers. And for those of you who don't know, we're an HR consulting and training firm. No truck driving positions available in 38 years, ever. It's like, I'm sorry, sir, where did you see the connection to that, to our senior consultant?
Deborah, I have 2 recruiting manager positions that I'm currently looking for right now. One on the temporary contract staffing side, and one on the direct hire side, because we have kind of like 2 teams. And yeah, no, I mean, we're talking a couple hundred resumes that are not even in the industry, or I mean, just not like, oh, you just barely missed the call. Like, no, like not even in the ballpark, like similar to your truck driver story. So, and this is, so, I mean, and that takes a lot of time. So yes, I mean, I would love to educate. I mean, I do it as much as I can. Would love to educate more candidates, like read all the things, but also too, as an employer, we as a group have also kind of trained them to tune out and not read, because right. And so it's kind of the mix. It's that double-edged sword. So with that being said, again, lots of things you can do. Just keep it simple. And again, another thing too, I know government, right? We do a lot of government. I know sometimes there's a lot of different steps and a lot of different things, or has to be in there. Totally understand. But if there is any way for you to raise the top ones to the top, right, the actual mission critical, or even put, here's your responsibilities, here's some sizzle, here's your qualifications, experience, and then the rest of it, right? If there's a way that you can move the information around, because just like recruiters, in theory, 10-15 seconds first glance before we decide if we're going to give a second glance, candidates are very similar in their job description looking, right? So your top 3 bullet points in your qualification / experience should be your like drop dead, this is what I have to have. Everything else is kind of like, good, you can put it in there, kind of list of priorities. Usually what I'm doing is I'm putting education, right? If there's a degree requirement, right on top, like do you have it or not, right? The required experience, like years of experience, or if there's maybe it's okay, 7 years of experience with this, but 2 years of this sub experience, right? that right on the top, and then I'm working my way down, right? Maybe required software if it's really required and it doesn't make sense to train or whatever. And assume that they're not going to get past 3. So if you only had 3, what would those 3 be? Make sure those are at top to at least grab them to keep reading more ideally, but at least to have them knock themselves out so they're not applying. But you will always have people that are just mass applying, clicking the button too. So those are a couple of things. And then if you're able to shorten your job posting publicly, right? So it's a little bit more sexy, as Deborah says, got a little bit more sparkle, a little bit more, concise. A good thing is to say, maybe have that first initial contact with them, have that phone screen, and send them the copy of the unicorn listing, right? Send them the go, great, I'm so glad, sounds like you're interested. Let me send you the actual HR version of the job description that you'd sign when you're onboarding. Here's all the things. Let me know if you have questions. Let's have a follow-up. So again, you can break that up in stages, but right now, just getting that, attention is really critical.
Absolutely.
Deborah, do we have anything else?
Yeah, Renee is chiming in that with Indeed and LinkedIn, the use of deal breakers is key to avoiding some of those completely unqualified applicants.
Yeah,
so
and
it's a great reminder about using some of those features if you're using those sources, and in some cases, knowing that those sources even have those features, is that something we should tap into? Because, LinkedIn has been a great resource and it's becoming quite the professional resource for networking. And for some people, they don't see it as a place for job searching. They just see it as networking. And it's like, absolutely tap into that. And whether you like Facebook or don't like Facebook, they've been investing a great deal of dollars into utilizing that for job searching for people, because the connections that people have. And when you're job searching, let's face it, if we tell everybody, whether it's job searching or looking to fill a position, we're trying to cast the widest net we possibly can. Why wouldn't you, in some respects, tell as many people as you can? Because we're either trying to screen people in or screen people out, right? And your comment about how much you're putting into those announcements, you're either doing one or the other. What is it doing and why are you doing it? Just as long as you know, that's one of the most important things. And then Jennifer's chiming in saying most applicant tracking systems have it to where you could set that up too in terms of the completely, the deal breaker elements. So utilize the tech that you have. So depending on the size of your organization, your applicant tracking systems, because honestly, and you work with a variety of size organizations. Our sweet spot really is a lot of smaller organizations because they don't have an HR person, and we're helping them in so many capacities. Some of the applicant tracking systems is really an Excel spreadsheet. It is not a formal system. Would they be well served? Yes. Do we have a onesie person in HR who could really use that? We have an owner who says, budget, we're not doing it. So you have to be able to, what do you have and how can you use it? So yes, and.
And I will say on LinkedIn as well, there's questions you can ask, and then you can, and again, LinkedIn's constantly changing. So who knows whenever anybody's watching this, if it's totally changed by the time, but there's things too where you can ask the question and get the answer, but not fully block them out. So you're going to get a list of candidates that have answered yes or no. And look, the piece of that as well is if you're doing a lot of similar positions, especially if you're an internal corporate, right? Like with staffing, we're doing a lot of different clients and a lot of different locations, but we do have a lot of crossover because we recruit for the same skill sets, engineering, IT, professional level roles. So even if they're not qualified for one, they might be qualified for something else. They're now in my system, right? They've now applied, but we've also can quickly reject them in that, but now they're searchable. So again, something to put in place is if you want to ask that question, do you really want to knock them out from getting through to your ATS if you have one? Or do you just want the ATS to show what their answer is so you can reject them, but they're searchable later? So something food for thought there as well. But I do want to talk about workplace flexibility, and then we can always, whatever time we have left as well, because I know we started a little bit late with the meeting passcode situation. So with that, how workplace flexibility affects recruitment success and what you can do to ensure your organization is meeting candidate needs. So that's kind of our last talking point today. And I did pull this from American Staffing Association, workforce flexibility trends. So again, they're looking at the entire country across all sectors at this point. Obviously, there's always some exceptions to the rule, but this is kind of the overall quote or information. As a result of the talent shortage, workers have their pick of jobs and are working environments. Employers who offer flexibility in terms of where, when, and how work gets done can be more attractive to potential candidates, right? So again, it's not a necessarily deal breaker, could be, but it's be more attractive, right? If you have a limited candidate pool, and what are ways that you can increase that candidate pool so that you as the employer have more choices and selection for who you're bringing on, right? That's really what this is really giving organizations more selection of who they get to pick instead of, well, I have to have it filled, so I'm either burning out my team, which then retention, they're going to quit, then I'm going to have even more openings, or I'm picking somebody, it's like I'm so desperate, I'm picking whoever, it doesn't work out, how much does that cost to then backfill when they don't work out or to cover what they're not able to do? And so it's just kind of this big snowball of situations. So the more we can do, the more attractive, the more sexy, the more sizzle, the more sparkly, right? Our job descriptions can be, including some of this flexibility, is also helpful as well. So again, this all ties together for sure when we're talking about that. Flexibility, if you can be as detailed as possible in your job descriptions, very, very helpful, because hybrid to one doesn't mean hybrid to another, right? Is it 1, 4, 2, 3? Is it, well, hybrid, you just have to be in the metro area in case we call you in for a monthly meeting. Again, describe out what that looks like. Couple of points for this, how workplace flexibility affects is one, right? I know, Deborah, you guys have lunch bunch, but all the things, right? Demand flexibility because it enhances work-life balance, mental, physical well-being, ability to care for their families, right? We've had a lot of conversations just in the HR community about, mental health awareness and what can you do and avoiding burnout. And, you've got a lot of family responsibilities. All of those things, right, that we want to be supportive comes to how can we be flexible. Flexible hours, flexible locations can aid talent acquisition and retention, right? So the more flexible options you have, the better. Again, the more attractive you are to candidates and to retain your current staff. Because if you got someone that has always been in the office 5 days a week, it didn't matter, their family situation, their personal situation changes, all of a sudden they need flexibility. Does it matter? Does it matter that they've been with you for a long time, right? Does it matter if they just started? Do you have those conversations with your team? Do you have something formally or even informally and discussing? So when someone has something come up, do they think they can come to you and have a flexibility conversation? Or do they go, I'm just going to go look for another job because, well, my manager is never going to allow me to do anything and I'm leaving, and you're losing your best talent, right? So again, it's retention as well as recruitment. And then again, recruiters must change their approach to grasp what candidates are really looking for, become trusted advisors, build long-term relationships. Now, not necessarily building long-term relationships. I mean, for us in staffing, right, we're finding out what candidates want, making sure when we have a client that comes along that it's a good fit, right? But I would say it's, trusted advisors and long enough through the process relationships, right? Are they holding their hand? Are they having those conversations? Are they saying, hey, this is what we're paying. Are you good with that or not moving forward? Are they saying, hey, candidate, what are you looking for in your next role? And then knowing, does that fit or not in to our current pay structure? Why are you looking to leave your last position? Maybe it's not money, maybe it is flexibility. Oh, great. Well, then here's a talking point. Here's what we offer that's going to solve that situation. What does that look like? So again, really digging in and making it more relational than transactional with those pieces is really critical. But a couple of things, I love any comments or questions about flexibility. What have your organizations done that is flexible? Now, most of us think flexible remote, right? Like everybody wants remote and work from home and things like that. I have seen some studies recently come out that people are actually preferring hybrid over even remote because of the human interaction. And there's other pieces, but having that flexibility, right, with that piece. But there's other ways to be flexible. So even when it comes to work location, right, it's, can they be truly remote, work anywhere, or can they just work from home? Or do you have another office in another region that they could potentially work from for a week or 2 or 3 or 4 if maybe their family's nearby, or maybe they just want to change a pace? Is there if you require them to be on site, is that an option? Do you have maybe exceptions where you're like, hey, everybody's in the office 5 days a week or 4 days a week, but if you were to take a week of PTO but want to stay an extra week, we kind of give that week extra as an exception for you to take your laptop with you so you can stay, your family can stay longer, but at the same point in time, you're able to have balance and not pay for 2 plane tickets to see your family or whatever that is, right? So flexibility doesn't have to be like the same exact thing every day, the same exact thing every week. The part of the flexibility is it does shift and move. Now, again, there's formal processes, you have things in place, and then there's informality. So the other piece too is flexible hours, right? Could be start times, end times. What is your organization's core hours, right? So maybe your core hours are from 9 to 3, but when you start and when you end, before or after that, kind of up for grabs. It could change every day. Like you have to drop the kids off to school, pick them up on early release day. What does that look like? Somebody wants to start it at 7, somebody wants to start at 8. Maybe it's, hey, you can work 4 10s instead of 5 8s. Maybe you work a half hour every day, Monday through Thursday in the summer, and leave 2 hours early on Friday, right? To get your summer weekend started. So that's the type of things, right, that we can look for that gives the flexibility that people are looking for, right? To have that work-life balance so they can be more productive when they are at work. So just a couple of little planting the seeds. Deborah, what do we got?
Well, first, I just want you to know that the new F word is flexibility. So I'm just saying. And we've got someone who said we offer hybrid, 2 days in the office, 3 days remote. That's the only thing that anybody has weighed in on in terms of flexibility. I will tell you that I've done some research around people will actually take less dollars for flexibility if there's going to be a trade-off. So is there options within your workplace? And I think Anne has a good point. I mean, in some respects, put everything on the table. What can we do within our workplace? Put it all on the table, have conversations, C-suite on up, get a group of team members together. What can we do? How can we do it? Because then if we can embrace more of that, that allows more people to come within the organization in some fashion. If we're talking about casting a wider net, what's wider than the entire world? I mean, maybe you don't want the entire world. Maybe we don't want New York and California. Okay. We definitely don't want Hawaii. The taxes are terrible in Hawaii. But we have the options that we never had before. We have technology. And think about the premise of adjusting to children, adjusting to taking care of. One of the things I've noticed being in the same place, I've worked with HR Answers for over 30 years. Many of my peers left their places of employment to go to another state to take care of their parental units for a variety of reasons, and then have come back to the Northwest. They had to leave their jobs to go do that. They wouldn't have to leave their jobs now. They could go, they could live with mom and dad for 2, 3, 5 years, whatever they needed to do. They'd still be working for their employer if they wanted to, but they'd be in Montana working, taking care of their parents as they adjust to whatever is happening. And then they could come back home when whatever is taking place is taking place. That was not a reality for most people prior to. We have so many more options now to adjust and to flex for those jobs that allow it, right? Production is still production, line worker, whatever it is. There's so many other scenarios. So just being able to be thoughtful about that, to get out of our boxes. Earlier, and I'm sorry, I don't see a first name, so I can't really give you credit. To before the flexibility conversation, with people bypassing those required qualifications and running into people who had great qualifications, not exactly in the industry that we're in, but being able to take a look at them, but they will decline moving forward since they would not want to start at a lower level of pay and being able to kind of learn
Yeah.
about the industry. But then the second kind of statement was, but then we'll check in with LinkedIn to make sure we're being competitive with a pay range and pay rate. And again, not knowing your first name. The other thing that I would suggest to you is that salary surveys, published salary surveys, are a much better option for accurate, good, solid data for salary information, because we want the right, I don't even know what I want to say. You want the statistical data to support what we're doing, not only regionally, geographically, but you want the math to be there solidly. Sometimes, depending on where the numbers are coming from, it might be self-reporting. It might not be as broad of information as you need. So published salary surveys are a better route. And whether you purchase those or work through a consulting house that has those, that's a better way to have good salary data. Because sometimes if it's self-reported in a place, that's not going to give you the kind of data you actually need for your salary surveys. And I'm actually not, just so we're clear, I'm not familiar with what Indeed has put together. So I'll put that out there, because I wouldn't, that's not the place that I would go. So I will put a disclaimer to my statement because I don't know what they use.
And I would say, Deborah, to be honest with you too, a lot of that data can't keep up in the last 3 years. Like even by the time that they publish it, it's out of date, because with the inflation, with the pandemic, with really people having to leave the job market, right? Just like leave altogether to take care of family. And some of them came back, some of them didn't, some of them went on their own, like all the different things that happened. And then we had such a shortage that so many employers are like, I have to pay more because I can't have that seat open. And so it raised. And by the time that salary survey comes out for a year ago's data, by the time they collect it, it's like, oh, and we bumped into something else. And so depending on the source as well, it could be a 10 or 15% difference in reality with that. So I think they're a great place to start, right? In that part of it. But I would say whoever's going to do, whether it's a staffing firm like myself, going, what are the candidates with all of those checkbox unicorn type things? What are they asking for, right? Because usually candidates, I mean, some will go over the moon, but some are like, hey, I'm making X, and they'll disclose it. We're not allowed, obviously, to ask, but they'll say, I'm here, I'm looking for there. And we're able to then go back to our clients and say, hey, they're doing all the things you want, and they're already making X, right? So of course they're not going to leave for the same, and or like it's already above where you're at. So I think listening to your candidate is very, very helpful, because if you've got somebody that's looking for too much, but like note it somewhere, right? Even if it's a sole spreadsheet off the side, so you can go back to the hiring managers, you can go back to who's making those comp decisions and say, hey, I know we did the salary, I know we did whatever, but I'm finding a larger discrepancy in this particular market or this niche, that's, those type of things. Because a lot of times too, if you have very specialized people, they're going to be a bigger gap than last year's salary data too. So just keep those pieces in mind as you go through things.
Carrie's weighing in, and I'm glad that you are, Carrie, and I would encourage people to be reading the chat box, because one of the things we also have to be thinking about from a good success practice on the HR side of things is that what's our compensation plan, philosophy? What have we put in place? We want to be competitive. There's no doubt about that. We also want to be careful that we're not so competitive that we're violating our pay equity laws that we have in the state of Oregon, that we've got compensation within our structure inside an organization. So if we are way out of whack, we also then maybe have handcuffed ourselves, and you can't sustain that. We also have to be able to afford the salaries, because if the company isn't making money and we're just, breaking even, I can't even afford pay increases. So there's a lot of factors that go into building your compensation plan and program. So it isn't just about the dollars in that respect. So I want us to be wise. We could have a whole conversation and more than an hour, a lot more than an hour, to make sure that we're being thoughtful about any requirements that we have, state specific, pay equity laws, all that kind of stuff that we want to be thoughtful about, in conjunction with making sure that we're doing what we need to do to be wise with the market and the talent and getting people in the door, because there are other ways of being able to handle compensation besides just our quote unquote base pay. We can be creative in other ways. Yeah, there are other things that we can do. Absolutely. So here's the deal. It's that time. And this is what I love. We seem to always get really like, oh, we got great questions. We got stuff. And it's the time. And I want to be able to honor people. We can stick around. We can chat. I'm more than happy to do so. But I also want to be thoughtful about the fact that maybe Anne has someplace else to be, or some of the rest of you. It's like, Deborah, thanks, but it's noontime or 1 o'clock. I gotta go. Got other stuff. Totally understand. So we're going to call it a wrap on this official conversation. Anne, thank you so much for being with us. Each of you, thanks for joining us. Glad that you did. Next month is going to be July. We're going to do July 12th next month, because otherwise it's like July 5th and we just got done with the holiday, and some of you might actually extend your holiday. So don't want to push the envelope. So we're actually going to meet on the second Wednesday of the month. We'll do all of our normal announcements and sharing of that it's happening. I'm actually going to facilitate. We're going to talk about all the quiets that are out there and why they're happening and what we can do about them. Because most of you know about the quiet quitting, but have you heard about all the other quiets that are trending, that people are talking about, that we need to be addressing in some fashion or another? So that's going to be our topic in July. So hopefully you and others will join me for that. And I think that's pretty much it in terms of just the formal stuff. So I will turn off the recording, but if you guys want to hang and chat and talk and ask questions and then we absolutely can. But otherwise, glad you were all part of this one. Appreciate it. And Miss Anne, as always, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Deborah.
You bet.
Thank you both.